I recently received an email asking for help in constructing a checkerboard half square triangle. Now my mind was racing with all of the possible things that could be going wrong, and I did actually come up with a solution of the things that will make it go right. So, are you ready? Let's get started. That is right, everybody. Welcome back to Making It Fun. I am your overly caffeinated host, Rob Appell, National Sales Manager at Michael Miller Fabrics, official maker of fun right here on YouTube, having a blast with all of you. And yes, please keep the questions coming. I am having so much fun building out the year for 2022's content, working around a lot of the questions that all of you have been asking me. And today, yes, I'm going to handle the construction of this checkerboard half square triangle. It absolutely was a question that was emailed to me. I'm not going to embarrass the viewer out there. He was quite frustrated in what was going on in the process. And like I said, there's a million things that will go wrong with this, especially if you've followed a lot of my other videos where I've taught you how to make these things in the past. So today we're going to focus right on just the construction of the checkerboard half square triangle block to make sure our points do not go missing on that diagonal. That's the whole focus on the video. From there you can build a million different great quilts by being able to accomplish this square, which is not as easy to accomplish as it may look like on the wall. Now of course we're using the Michael Miller Fabrics, our basics. We love using those here at Making It Fun. Jet black, the ultimate checker in the checkerboard, but I really wanted to use some of my beautiful refractions fabrics. I did the Stargazer quilt recently and I had some of the Stargazer or the refractions rolls. So I had some 2.5-inch strips left over. So that's what I used for our base construction. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But I just wanted to point out how awesome this refractions is from Michael Miller. The best part about it is obviously the color saturation, but the second best part is you get the entire variegation from edge to edge. That's the 45 right there. So the color goes from light to dark all the way across the fabric. Comes in about 12 fantastic jewel tone colors. I just love working with this. So do check out a couple of the other videos we've done with the refractions out there. Visit a local quilt shop, ask for the refraction rolls, check out the beautiful refractions fabrics on the bolt. And now we're going to dive right in. And like I said, we are going to make a checkerboard, and don't hate me. This isn't even the right square because I'm going to teach you how to make it because I needed this to teach you what will go wrong. So follow me. What we have here, kids, is a checkerboard that can become a half square triangle block very soon. So as you see here with this checkerboard, every opposite square is black or refractions, and I was playing with the variegation in the block because I just thought that would look cool when we were done. And when we are done, we do need to make a half square triangle. And the goal with that half square triangle is when we lay in our black, that this go ahead and we're going to just perfectly match up and go right across that diagonal for the points. So a lot of times we've been taught that when we're making half square triangles, we start with squares. And that's the first pitfall I think that my friend was falling into. They started with a checkerboarded square like this, if I understood the question correctly. Then they went ahead like we've always been taught, right? So your next step is you take your square and you take a ruler and a chalk pencil or something, and you're just going to draw a diagonal line, you know, right on the back side normally of one of the two fabrics that you would be marrying together. Now with this line, normally that is a guide line. So technically you could draw this line right across here. You could sew right on that diagonal line. And if you did that right across here, that would be awesome. And you would get it to match up, except for then the rest of all of this checkerboard has now gone to waste because it's going to fall off. You're not using the other method of half square triangle, which is where you draw the line and then you do a 1/4-inch seam on either side of the line, which would then yield yourself 2 of the half square triangles, which would be perfect if we were using our checkerboard for that, right? Let me grab a larger ruler so you can kind of follow along what I'm trying to say here. So now if I want to split this so that my points are perfect in the final patchwork, that's tough to say, what I'm going to do is if I took this right here, right, that's my diagonal. Now every one of these tips right now is actually perfect. So just saying what I just said a moment ago. If I were to take and draw this diagonal line right now, and I stitched on that diagonal line, then chances are when I opened up my new piece of fabric, I would have beautiful points showing on one half of my checkerboard. But the rest of this checkerboard, all the work we did, would then have gone to waste because everything would be cut all the way down into here. If we did the method 2, where we drew this line and then we stitched, you can already see right here is where my thread would be, which means that my tips are going to be missing a 1/4 inch as you go. So either of the two construction methods really don't work if you start with the checkerboard itself. And that's what my mind was thinking. Start with your checkerboard, add a solid square to it. But you can see by the prep work, we're gonna have to go all the way to the triangle math. I'm gonna explain the triangle math again. I have other videos out there on half square triangle math. But let's talk about how to get from this kind of a checkerboard to the finished goal we're after. So I still had my strips. I had 3 of the jet black and I had 3 of the refractions. I don't know why I'm struggling with that one so much today. Maybe too much coffee. I know what you're all thinking out there. Put them right sides together, 1/4 inch seam allowance, and I sewed a bank of strip set rows. Super, super easy. And so really, when it was done, this is what is left from my prep work, right? So I just had 2.5 inch strips of each of these. Remember that number 2.5, please, because these 2.5 inches strips, right? So they were all cut, sewn in together. Then I subcut those strip set rows to make these units like this. So I could take one like this, I could put the opposite. And as I went, I started to develop the checkerboard. But here comes what you really have all been waiting for this long, and I'm not gonna drag it out 20 minutes like all those guys on those Facebook Live videos do. That's starting to really irritate me, by the way. Here's our answer. We're only building a checkerboard for half of the triangle, the half that we're gonna show, but we can still use our strips, and this is exactly how I did it. Let's get myself just a little bit more room. I made all of my strip sets as I needed, okay? So they had 6 units, 3 black, 3 refractions in each one of them. But what we really wanna do is we wanna finish by adding on these diagonals, and these squares are gonna have some special math involved. Remember, everything else right now is at 2.5. And you can actually see what I really did in building out is, oops, got these a little out of order, but I literally took my seam ripper out, and to one of these strips, I removed one of the blues, and then I removed the X, and the next and next, and I was able to use some of the strips for 2 parts because 2 and 4 make 6, and there's 6 in all of those things, right? This is cool stuff. So when this was all done, I have removed the refraction 2.5 inch squares from the top of each of the rows. You can see I've gotten started. Here is technically row 1, 2, 3, 4. Here's row 5, here's row 6. We're gonna finish those together and put them right here. Now this is the special math. This 2.5 inch square has been removed because when we're doing squares or rectangles, we're adding 1/2 of an inch to the finish size. So if I wanted 2 inch checkers, then I'm making 2.5 inch squares. But remember, it's a 7/8 inch add to the finish. So if I want a 2 inch finish to become a half square triangle, it is actually a cut at 2 7/8. Then cut on the diagonal, then cut and stitched into place to allow for the hypotenuse, everyone's favorite word out there. So here's what we're gonna do. This is actually a 2 7/8 square. You see, it is larger than 2.5. That's for those of you out there who think I oversimplify the math. Now, what I'm gonna do real quick is I'm gonna take my 2 7/8 square and I'm gonna divide it in half diagonally with a rotary cutter and a ruler to keep my hands safe. That hard work has now been done. The only other decision we had to make originally is which way are our triangles going to go. So if you're making lots of blocks and you're honoring the checkerboard, you may want to lay out your checkerboard parts first and then decide what direction your triangles will sew on. Follow along. Okay, so now all I'm going to need to do is I'm going to add a triangle to the top of each row where I removed the squares. We are now putting in triangles that are actually bigger. That gives us that extra seam allowance we need out here. Look, that 1/4 inch isn't missing anymore as it would be had I cut along that straight line. So to line up a triangle that is larger than a square, I'm going to look for the outside corner. I'm going to fold that right over. And I'm going to match up my straight edges. So I'm matching up this outside straight edge there. I'm matching up this top straight edge there. I'm going to go over to the sewing machine with that 1/4 inch seam allowance. And just nice and slow, just lay that in real nice and accurately there. Making sure the iron is hot, which mine is cooled off while I was chatting there for a moment. So we'll let that heat up. I'm going to need this other piece put on, so I'm going to go ahead and just, like I said, line up that top straight, that outside straight edge, so straight edges to straight edges, and then we're going to stitch on this next and last triangle that forms half of our checkerboard. So all the way through that outside corner there. Cut those threads, and hopefully I've stalled long enough that our iron is nice and hot now, right? I definitely have made a mess, which is going to make the work a little more challenging, but I think we'll be okay. Now for these, I like to press up out of the way, and there is going to be the little residual corner, this little extra tip here that's going to show over a little bit, and that's no problem at all. We're just going to sew that into our seam allowance. So I'm going to go back lining up, making sure that my checkerboards are all matched up, my parts count all matches up. Now, like I said, I'm just going to lay that over. I'm going to nest in this seam here and here and here where the straight piece is lined up. And I'm going to come on over to the sewing machine. Now, normally I like to have the bulk of the work on the feed dogs, which is opposite what I'm showing right this second, but this is just the easiest way to get all of this in nice and tidy. I'm going to start off of those triangles. You could backstitch if you want, or hold your fabric to lock it in nice there. Fingers are securing those seams as I go right over the top. Super nice and easy. And you just take each one of these seams as you go so that you can really make sure that your seams nest up nicely. Just put out a video on the word nested seams. If that doesn't make any sense to you, I've recently broken that conversation down into a short form video as well that I'm getting lots of compliments on. So I'll be doing lots more of those single answer style videos instead of project-based videos. We can get into the parts and pieces if you'd like. So like I said earlier, please keep sending in those questions. Please keep letting me know what I can teach you all, because I absolutely love to teach. And I forgot to tell you that I was just simply pressing that over. You can still see the add-on with those 1/4 inch extras that are out there. Last piece I'm going to put into play right here so that we now technically have half of our half square triangle done, the checkerboarded half, right? Okay, making sure everything matches up again. And we're just going to now go ahead and finish off this construction real quick. Okay, now let's press this one real quick, and we are ready to start discussing how we're going to get this other last part of the block built, or the triangle that fills in these spaces here. So this one I'm actually sweating bullets on right now because I have a triangle cut. I've done the math in my head actually 3 times, came up with 2 different answers, and now I'm hoping that I get it right. Mike, did you have a question back there? Oh, you're just excited about this. We're just hoping we get this right at this point. So what I'm really going to try to remind you all of, again, is the math of the half square triangle when it comes to building them from squares to start. So let's just call this one, again, a 12.5 inch square that is now raw. it would make a 12-inch finished half square triangle if we were using the squares. But if we're using the triangles, we actually need to make it 12 and 7/8. So you could actually calculate, because you know you're using 2.5-inch strips across the board, or I just measured this and I actually came up with 12 3/4 across my square. So what we're really doing is we're adding, I know, more confusing math. Sorry if this is getting a little bit tough on the brain that way, but we're actually adding 3/8 to the raw size, right? Which is 7/8 to the finished size. So really, if this is 12 3/4, I cut my square originally at 13 1/8. So I just added the 3/8 to the 12 3/4. So once I made my square, then I cut the diagonal, because it's by having that diagonal that's a little bit bigger and these diagonals that's a little bit bigger, fingers crossed, I should be able to lay these two, again, like we do when we're always working. Well, it worked, it was right. Like we do when we're working with our triangles. We're looking at our flat edges and our flat edges out there, right? So now to go ahead and finish this sewing, I'm going to just sew this diagonal. To make my life easy at the sewing machine, because I'm dealing with two triangles, I'm going to now flip this so not only can I manage these seams, but I can nail that point. So watch this. Let's get on over here with these points lined up nice and crisp, and I'm sewing from the beginning off, respecting that 1/4-inch seam allowance. And now as we come in here, remember the bottom is a solid. There's no seams at all. So if I need to make an adjustment, look, I want to have my needle land right on that point in there, because that point is the point that's happening on the checkerboard on the right sides of the fabric. So you sew right through here, you do this. And as I'm stitching this through and telling you this, I actually really want to compliment and thank my dear friend Charisma Horton. And this is the other reason I waited this long to put out this video. Because if you're following along on the fabulous block of the month, our wonderful block of the month for 2022, we actually did this construction for block number 2. I would not have been able to figure, well, I could have figured this out on my own because I knew what the problems were going to be. But what I really wanted to do was find the solution. And Charisma designed a beautiful multicolored block that actually represented a checkerboard block 2. And so that is where this information is really coming from. It's block 2 from the fabulous block of the month, although I do need to let you know that the sizes have been changed to protect the innocent and protect Charisma and all the hard work she did on her wonderful pattern. And with all of that said, I think I have stalled now just long enough, hoping that when we press this open, it is now the perfect patchwork half square triangle checkerboard combination that you all were asking for. Now, again, we have a lot of seam and a lot of bulk in here, so I'm going to press from the checkerboard part up into the solid part, because my fabrics are going to just lay down so much more nicely that way. So as I do that, here we go. Go ahead. And there is that perfect, well, maybe I should set it down so you can see it against my shirt, half square triangle checkerboarded quilt block. And that's how we do it. Just a reminder, don't start with the full checkerboard square. You will either be wasting half of your time and your work, or you will be chopping your points. Make yourself the strips like you are going to make yourself the checkerboard square, and then break them down into the triangles first, putting on that 2 7/8 if you were using 2.5-inch strips. Using your triangle math, you will get it all dialed in and just perfect for you. Pretty cool, right? Anyways, super glad you were all here today. I really hope I was able to answer this question for more than just one of you, but either way, please keep sending in those questions via email, rob@michaelmillerfabrics.com. You can leave them in the comments below, but I really see them best when you put them at rob@michaelmillerfabrics.com, and I will do my best to offer you amazing answers in video format right here at Making It Fun. We'll see you next week, everybody. Wow, you are still there. Thanks for sticking with me till the end of the video. I know, I get a little long-winded sometimes. But if you did enjoy today's video, make sure you check out a few of the other ones we've created. I think they're terrific. And of course, please subscribe to the channel. Make sure you hit the little bell to be notified. I don't want you to miss a moment of the fun. Stay safe and happy sewing.